Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today for this half hour. What we'd like to do over the next half hour is give you a flavor for this concept called two-tier ERP. And after that, hopefully there'll potentially be some questions that we can take, but we'll go a little bit into detail in terms of what it is, why people are thinking about taking this kind of a strategy to manage their subsidiary ecosystem. And then we've got a couple of customers that can share with us their experiences. So my name is Mike Morrell. I'm part of the Business by Design Solutions marketing team, and I'll be moderating this event. And before we get started, let me give you a little bit of a flavor for what this two-tier ERP concept's about. What a lot of customers tell us is, especially when they have a lot of subsidiaries, that there's a little bit of a challenge or a set of dynamics that are a little bit opposing when it comes to understanding the needs of a subsidiary and understanding the needs of corporate. What people tell us is that a subsidiary needs to be fast, needs to be flexible, needs to be able to be responsive to local needs, and they need to be dynamic in terms of their business processes. Okay. On the other hand, corporate wants to be able to deliver the kind of solution to their subsidiary that will satisfy their needs, that will ensure that they're successful, but they also want a certain amount of governance and compliance. Okay, so they don't necessarily want to be able to, or they can't really afford to give their subsidiaries a complete full reign because they need to have some control over best practices, financial controls, that kind of thing. So where historically a lot of companies may have thought that the best thing you could do was to extend ECC or R3 across their subsidiaries, what in many cases they're finding is their subsidiaries, because of the issue of needing to be dynamic, needing to have a low-cost solution, extending ECC isn't necessarily the best solution, okay? And yet there's still this business need of being able to manage your ecosystem in a more effective way. So what a lot of people, or a lot of companies are doing, and there's quite a bit of talk about this in the marketplace, is they're looking at using ECC to manage corporate like you always have, because this plays very well into the need to have efficient processes, okay? And using an alternative solution, a second-tier solution, to be able to manage the business needs of their subsidiaries, while at all times ensuring that there's a lot of communication, both from information and business processes going back and forth between the two. Okay, so conceptually, that's really what people are doing, and what we're trying to showcase today is a couple of customers that are actually doing that today, and I want them to share with you why they made these decisions to go and take a two-tier approach, okay, and some of the benefits that they're seeing from that. So with that, let me go ahead and introduce David Kang. And I'll let David introduce himself and talk a little bit about what he's done, as well as a little bit about his company. So David, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is David Kang. I'm the CFO of Landy Renzo. And to give you a little background about myself, with my previous employer, I have over 10 years of experience with accounting and finance, and also with operations and logistics. One of my highlights there was opening up European distribution through a new subsidiary that I created in London, which is actually why Landy Renzo brought me on board. And so to talk about a little bit about Landy Renzo has over 1,000 employees and is based over 13 different subsidiaries worldwide. And we are a worldwide leader in clean alternative fuels for vehicles. And what that basically means is we can take a brand new vehicle off an OEM assembly line from one of the big three car manufacturers, and then we'll convert that automobile so that it now runs on CNG or LPG, clean alternative fuel. CNG is known as compressed natural gas, but more often than not, it's called clean natural gas. It's the same gas that you cook at home with, or that you heat your home with in the wintertime. And that's Landy Renzo.
Great, thank you. Okay, so our next panelist is Michael Menzing from ACE. And Michael, if you'd give us a quick snapshot of what you've done, who you are, okay, and then a little bit about ACE.
Okay, my name is Mike Menzing. I am a IT director in business relationship. I'm responsible for the supply chain and international. For the supply chain systems, I'm responsible for the ordering, warehouse management, traffic, logistics, also the purchasing and replenishment. And on an international, I'm responsible for all their systems. At ACE in the last few years I was engaged in our purchase of SAP and our implementation of SAP. So we purchased SAP in 2006 and finished our implementation of that in 2010. Then in 2010, we went out and we purchased SAP B1, and we implemented that in about 90 days. Just to tell you a little bit about the company Ace Hardware, Ace Hardware is about 4,400 retailers. We're in 60 countries, 500 international retail locations. Ace's mission is to be the most helpful hardware store on the planet. And with that, one of the big things that we do is all about helpfulness. Ace Hardware has won the J.D. Power's Award for home improvement for the last 6 years. And one of the things now, and that's from a domestic perspective, is what we're trying to do is also do that internationally.
Great. Okay, good. Thank you, Michael. So what I'd like to do is, keep this fairly informal, and maybe give us a better flavor for what kinds of challenges you've had and how you've dealt with that. So to start us off, okay, so prior to solution implementation, okay, David, for you it was business by design, and for Michael it was B1. Can you give us a flavor for what kinds of challenges you were running into and what led you to basically implement an ERP solution? David?
Absolutely. For Landy Renzo, when I came on board, there was no ERP at all. We were running on QuickBooks. A third-party accounting firm came in, and they were doing all the bookkeeping on that. And when it comes to a quickly growing business, you really need to be able to track control of all your expenses and see where your money is going and look at the KPIs. But I don't think of QuickBooks as an ERP. It's nothing more than a glorified Microsoft Excel with macros. So there immediately was a need for an ERP. And another thing is, because we're a relatively new startup, you start off with zero revenue. So an expense is a very important part of the business. So justifying hiring an IT staff and hardware and cabling our entire building for it just didn't seem like the right option. So I think the more I started looking at cloud computing, the more it really made sense for us. In addition, SAP has a really good reputation for best practices inherent in their ERPs, and that really helped us to streamline and develop processes with checks and balances and internal controls. So all across the board, cloud solution really made sense for us. One other thing that I'd like to note is corporate also really wanted to make sure that we weren't going rogue and doing things the way that we weren't supposed to be doing. And they run on SAP R3 and SAP Suite. So it only made complete sense for me to pick SAP as a partner because the connectors are already in place there as well.
But so when you got started there, you said you were implementing back in, or you started the subsidiary in about 2010?
Correct.
Okay, so about when did you decide that as you got going you needed something a little bit more sophisticated than QuickBooks or Excel? Pretty early on, or?
Definitely. Right when I came on board, I saw a McKinsey study that the company had done, and I saw the growth figures, and it was a no-brainer. If you're running a business and you have significant growth, everyone's in business here to become profitable. But with the kind of growth numbers I was looking at, it would quickly grow out of control if I didn't have a full ERP system with checks and balances and internal controls to keep control of everything. Mm-hmm. So as soon as I came on board and I saw that McKinsey report for those growth forecasts, the first thing I did, I think a week after that, was I started calling all the vendors out there and shopping the market for an ERP system. And just throughout that process, it naturally came down to progression through choice of elimination that cloud computing was the right choice for Landy Renzo.
Okay, good. So you saw yourself not necessarily out of control, but heading towards a direction that was going to take you out of control pretty quickly.
Oh, absolutely.
So you wanted to get it sort of ahead of the snowball, if you will, and make sure that by the time that you got to that point, that things were basically being managed effectively.
Correct. You know, a lot of times I hear horror stories or war stories about how people are managing a business, especially when it comes to a successfully and aggressively growing business, where they go through an ERP implementation and it becomes the most difficult thing in the world, or they just wish that they had done things differently. So I figured, you know, if I'm going to spend that capital or expense anyways, why not do it the right way the first time and, you know, tackle that problem, address it head on, and make sure that you have your business processes already established and set in place so that your operations become lean and efficient to ultimately offer your customer the best product you can in a timely manner and a most cost-efficient manner as well.
Good. Excellent. Michael, how about you? Why don't you tell us your story?
Well, at ACE, in our international business, we've been running international businesses since 1969. And we typically have been using the supply chain channels that we currently use domestically, where we could be ordering from our retail support centers, or we could be doing a drop ship from one of our vendors. In early 2000, we opened a warehouse in Shanghai. And what we did is that it was more of a trial. Let's see what it's like to run our business and put a warehouse out there and stock product, and then also do some of this, what we call foreign to foreign, where we would supervise the ordering of product from different vendors into our international retailers. And what ended up happening as the business was growing is that we were basically losing control, is we really didn't know what was happening out on our international location. So we weren't really sure exactly what the sales were or what the inventory was. They were actually running pretty much Excel and Quicken. And so running those two things, and it's two disconnected systems where just because you had a sales order, it didn't roll up to your financials. And so we really found ourselves that we didn't have control. And then what we were doing is we had no inventory visibility for our retailers. So typically for our retailers, what they're trying to do is they're trying to create a truckload. So they want to get a truckload of product so they can get the truckload and then get it shipped out. And what we were having a hard time with is because we were running from a third-party logistics company, and that third-party logistics company, they were keeping inventory, and we were keeping inventory. And those two inventories were never exactly the same. And so from our retailers' perspective, we're like, well, how much, they want to know, how much is there? And we'd be saying, there's a couple hundred. Well, there wouldn't be a couple hundred. One system had a couple hundred, the other one didn't. So what we did is we went and looked at an alternative solution, and that's when we had picked SAP B1.
So what I keep hearing is this whole issue of control, okay? Either realizing that you were going to go out of control, or even making an analysis that you were out of control now, and you had to do something quickly, I assume. I assume that speed was probably something that was important to both of you, okay? Where you need to get something done, you get it done fast, you need to be cost effective and get flexible, okay? So both of you run the suite at corporate. Was it different? I mean, did you have to convince people that this two-tier ERP strategy was something that you could make work? Why did you make that decision? I mean, David, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because actually when I proposed the idea of implementing SAP BYD, corporate really didn't like that idea. They said, well, no, why don't you just keep on running on QuickBooks until we think it's necessary for you to roll up on SAP ECC or SAP Suite. And I thought, well, okay, let's talk about this. How long are we talking here? Are you talking 6 months, 1 year? And they go, well, maybe, or maybe 2 years, or 3 years, or 4 years. Like, no, that's not going to happen, because, the problems that you have not having the internal processes developed and not being able to see your inventory and having that disconnect with operations, logistics, supply chain, procurement, I mean, everything. It can get out of control too quickly and too easily. But I think the biggest benefit that really convinced them was twofold. A, I showed them what the capital expense would be, and they looked at that number and said, wow, are you sure? And I actually had to call back my SAP sales rep and, hey, sorry, but it's a little too cheap. And, we went through the process, and then, there was a subscription fee and learned all that. And did a little bit more cost analysis into it, and I won that battle, and I think it's been the best decision ever since. But and I'll go back to the same thing that I already said is SAP Corporate, they have SAP R3 and ECC Suite rolled out to all the other subsidiaries. It's been a huge capital expense. They're still paying for it with all the IT staff and all the problems that they're having. So, they kind of figured, okay, we'll give this one a shot. And I can confidently say that it's worked out very well for us so far.
Good. Michael, how about you?
Yeah, for us, I don't think it was as much of a, we should go to SAP ECC. I think what we were looking for is more that speed and the flexibility. And we actually, when we made the decision to do this, we were up and running within I think it was 8 to 12 weeks. And we probably could have actually put it in quicker, but the business actually had decided, because of certain things going on, they didn't want to move that fast. And really, from a flexibility perspective, I think that's the biggest thing. If you look at, if we were running from our corporate systems versus from a warehouse system, SAP B1, we right now, yesterday, we did 720,000 lines from an order perspective corporately. So what that means is that there were 720,000 lines of drills and hammers and screwdrivers that were filled domestically. Now, those orders were taken yesterday. By this time of the day, we've already filled them. They're ready to be shipped out and ready to go. So it's a very structured, efficient environment. On the Shanghai warehouse, if we look at a given warehouse, so far this year, we've done 5,000 lines in a given month. So the flexibility of being able to stop an order, add to the order, add items to the middle of an order, the ability to release it when we want to release it is so important. We don't exactly know how that business is going to develop over time, so we wanted to make sure we didn't want to put that structure of putting SAP in. Someday we may go do that, but right now, developing a business, we didn't think it was necessary. And you talked about the cost. The cost is it's a no-brainer. You look at the cost of a big SAP versus SAP B1, and also we also found it very easy and quick to get up on.
Excellent, excellent. So I talked a little bit about during the introduction that there's this balance that has to happen between satisfying the needs of the subsidiary, which again are quick, fast, local, and making sure that you're dealing with some of the compliance and governance needs that you get from corporate. Did that ring true in your particular situation? Did you see that happening, and how did you react to that? I mean, tell us a little about how that worked out.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, much to your 8 to 12 weeks, we went live within 90 days, and it was a painful process, I'll be honest. Yeah. But once we got through that process, and I gave corporate access through a user ID because it is a cloud ERP, so it's all internet-based. So I give a corporate ID to someone over in Italy, and it just increases the efficiency and frees up so much time for myself as well, because now I don't have to spend 2 to 3 hours every day taking an Excel report and formatting it, throwing macros in it, making it look pretty with all the KPIs that they want on there. I can go in there, I can format all the reports, I can save it as a template, and I can even set up a schedule where it emails it to them every week, every month, or however it is. So the implementation time was very fast. The efficiency has been significantly increased. I say at least 30%, but I'm sure it's a lot more than that. It's just a winner all around.
Good. So and so corporate felt that you were getting good value, out of the application. What kind of feedback did they give you in terms of the whole issue of governance and compliance and making sure that you didn't go rogue, as you said?
Well, 3 months after the implementation, and I don't think I ever told you this, but 3 months after the implementation, all of a sudden I went through an internal audit. So they sent in their compliance team. They stayed with me for a week, and they reviewed my chart of accounts, and they reviewed the document flow and the process flow, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. They went back to corporate, they sent an email, and they talked to their CFO over there and said, hey, this guy David here, he might know a thing or two about what he's doing. And it worked out very well, and as a matter of fact, as a result of that, like I said, we do have 13 international subsidiaries. One of them was right about to begin an ECC suite rollout.
Oh, don't tell me that.
So, one of the internal auditors that came over actually flew to that subsidiary over there and spoke with the SAP team in that country and tried to get the implementation there. But for legal reasons, it just didn't work out.
Okay.
But I mean, I think that's really a good success story for how well it turned out.
So it's a good, when people start looking at this two-tier kind of approach, obviously there's a lot of choices, but what you're saying is at least you've given them an additional choice in terms of looking at what's going to make the most sense for Landy Renzo.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Michael, how about you?
It was a successful implementation. We were able to bring up order to cash, procure to pay, and then we also were able to do a couple add-ins where we actually had a catalog. We used a company, ZIT, which allowed us to put a catalog in front of SAP B1, and then we're doing our replenishment through Velogix. So we were able to quickly bring all of these things up. Realize that first 12 weeks, the Velogix and the catalog came another, I'm going to say 3 to 4 months after that, where we were able to add onto the existing application. So definitely there was a benefit from there. But from a corporate perspective, we also were able to, see the visibility. We actually are able to merge in through into ECC, through BPC, we merge in the financials. Okay. So we're actually, information is transmitted every night from SAP B1 into ECC. So from our corporate dashboard perspective, we see exactly what's going on in our regional offices. Since we've brought up the one instance, we have actually done 2 expansions. We've opened a warehouse in Dubai and opened a warehouse in Panama. And when we opened those warehouses, we were able to quickly bring that up. And then we're also so from a corporate perspective, we've got those controls. They can see the sales that are going. From the same corporate dashboard, they look at our domestic sales, they look at our international sales. And then also the regional offices, from a flexibility perspective, it wasn't long once we got out there and they decided what they wanted to do. Example, one of the things they want to do is something called quick ship, where actually in Panama, we have a vendor, Westinghouse, that actually has products that's right next to us. So we were able to quickly bring up a catalog, and now what we could do is offer additional products to our centers, where if we had taken and used the SAP ECC, that would have not been a possibility. Mm-hmm. We were actually able to implement that flexibility with SAP B1.
Oh, good. So would it be safe to say that if the subsidiary world is sort of one world, and the corporate world is maybe another world, that we've truly gotten the best of both worlds here as we move forward? I mean, it feels like we're really, like you both have taken quite a move towards this unified ERP environment across, even though it's 2 different solutions, it's still, both of you are providing a lot more visibility, okay, to your corporate organizations, in addition to being able to manage what you're doing at the local level much more efficiently. Fair statement? Good. So one of the things that our customers talk a lot about, and Michael, you talked about this as well, is there's a lot of intercompany processes that need to happen, okay? And I was wondering if you could address maybe a little bit about what kind of intercompany processes you look at and whether these solutions have helped you do that. So maybe Michael, why don't you start us off on that?
So I had mentioned that our international retailers order from 4 different supply chains, 4 different channels. 2 of those channels are actually out of SAP ECC, and 2 of the channels are out of SAP B1. So we've been able to use the best of both worlds. Now, the 2 channels that are coming from SAP B1 are our foreign-to-foreign and our new RDCs from our regional offices. And that's where we want the flexibility. So we're able to get the best of both worlds there, and then we're allowing our retailers that they can order from any of the 4 channels and use the one that makes sense for them. And one of our big things from a strategy perspective, what we're trying to do is get that product closer to them. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to push them to using one of the regional offices in Panama, Shanghai, or Dubai, so the product's closer to them so that they can get it quicker instead of going over the water, taking that, it could take 45 days to sometimes get product to the facilities versus getting it locally. So just the sharing between the systems, we've been able to do that, as I mentioned earlier. This whole thing is we run one dashboard from a sales perspective, and it's got all 4 of those channels in it.
So would you say that that your customers are benefiting in addition to some of the operational efficiencies? I mean, we talked a little bit about earlier about this concept of a perfect order and how a lot of these solutions have helped you really move towards that. I mean, hearing that's a little bit of what you're saying. Is that?
From a a consumer's perspective or a retailer perspective, just the fact that the products are closer to them. We were able to bring the lead time on some of this is less than a week now. So we can actually get an order, fill an order, and get it to their door in a week, which was not even possible before. So putting in these solutions has allowed us to put up that type of a business process that, eight-week, 12-week perspective, and then also allowed us to add additional things to it.
So what I'm hearing is that you've actually been able to increase the velocity of your supply chain, which at some point will also reduce maybe some of the inventory across your environment?
Yeah, we've actually, from a sales perspective, we realized last year from how much sales there were, we basically went from 0 to already at $4 million of sales. And so we're projecting that we're going to be between 20 and 25 million, and that would be additional sales. We realized the international business is about $200 to $225 million. That there is just additional sales on top of that. And then also, just from a total inventory perspective, is that if you look at lead times, the amount of time it takes us to get from the United States to, let's just say, Shanghai, for us to get there, they have to maintain that inventory in their store. So we're able to reduce the total inventory in our supply chain by putting warehouses closer to them.
Excellent, excellent. David, how about you? Intercompany processes, what have you seen?
For our intercompany process, I don't think we've realized as much benefit as you have, Mike, but we're in a much more early phase of the business. But the one significant benefit that we did see is in the intercompany reporting. Previously, there was no way to really generate a report, financial report, where I can go ahead and report this to corporate saying, well, these are the inventories that we have, and this is what you can use for your intercompany elimination. Well, now, when we submit a purchase order or procurement for our materials, and about 15% of our inventory all comes from corporate in Italy. So now we can go ahead and have that accurate record keeping and provide real-time, up-to-date information to them for what it actually is intercompany. But I think more than that benefit, the real benefit that we saw was in the supply chain and the operations, because now we had an ERP that had full SCM, inbound, outbound logistics capability, that we were able to reduce our turnaround time and being able to generate a completely delivered, converted CNG kit to our customer, because now we have accurate record keeping on an operational and a procurement level for what the lead times are and what a delivery time is, and if it's not meeting the delivery time, you get a red flag, you get a warning in SAP that will tell you that. So now we have our purchasing team that can pick up the phone and actually call someone over there in Italy. So that's where we really saw that benefit and that advantage.
Excellent, thank you. So we've got about 2 minutes left. Michael, 1 minute. How would you summarize the value that you've really achieved with this solution?
I think some of the value points is just that inventory visibility that we've gotten out there, is that now our international retailers, they're able to see the inventory, so as they're placing their orders, they can place the order to the amount that we have available to them. The flexibility that we've been able to do, we've been able to bring in new business models. That's been very helpful for us, and just the speed we're able to move in.
Excellent. David, how about you?
I can't tell you how much benefit that we've seen as a result of BYD. I think first is the fact that it's a cloud solution. Our operating expenses are relatively low because obviously we don't have an IT person. I'm about as close to an IT person as they come, and we're doing okay so far. And I don't have to purchase any hardware or rewire the building. I mean, I can't tell you how much value that is, because we're actually growing at a pace where we might pick up and move to a whole nother location. And my president came to me about a month ago and said, David, can we handle that? What's our turnaround time for that? And it was pretty refreshing to look at the reaction on his face when I told him, from an ERP and an IT perspective, there really is no big restriction there, because all it really is going to be turning on a computer at another location and you're up and running.
Excellent, excellent. So let me summarize real quickly. What we tried to accomplish here is to give you guys a flavor for what this two-tier concept could look like. Okay, give you some real live examples. And really talk about this value of addressing both worlds. The fact that if you can address the needs of your subsidiaries in an effective kind of way so that they can take advantage of being fast, flexible, and local, while at the same time, they can take advantage of the fact that they've got, you know, this corporate organization, that's going to give them yet another competitive advantage. So if you look at the choices that you have as you start thinking about managing your subsidiaries, really there's 4 choices from SAP. You could extend ECC, you've got Business All-in-One, Business by Design, and B1. And all of those solutions are going to be appropriate for particular kinds of subsidiaries. So my request to you is to, as you start looking at managing your ecosystem in a more effective way, okay, that you consider these 4 choices and really make sure that you're addressing the needs of your specific subsidiaries, knowing that when the dust settles, you're still going to have this global ERP environment that's going to allow you to manage your whole ecosystem in a more effective way. So with that, let me thank you, David, Michael, for joining us here. And if there's any questions, we can follow up in the discussion area afterwards. So I thank you again for your time, and have a great rest of Sapphire.